Fox's Catherine Herridge is reporting tonight that Rod Rosenstein threatened to subpoena emails and phone records from Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee in January. It's an explosive story. We're going to ask the Attorney General about it directly in just a minute. Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. The first ever meeting between a sitting American president and a North Korean leader has finished. President Trump and Kim Jong-un met one another in Singapore, put their names on a new deal that seeks to reduce tensions on the Korean peninsula. What's in the deal and what else has happened in the summit's wake? For that, we go to Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry, who is in Singapore right now. Ed?
Tucker, great to see you. President Trump came, he saw, and he got a deal, despite all of the naysayers trying to talk down the possibility of American success before, during, and after these talks. The president tonight, in fact, is going to go on offense, try to sell this deal on Hannity next hour, telling Fox that Kim Jong-un is going to start denuclearization virtually immediately with the document they signed here, which he says could save millions of lives by preventing nuclear war. Remarkable, coming just weeks after North Korea again threatened a nuclear conflict. During one of their walks together, Kim was actually overheard through his interpreter telling the president these pictures were so surreal that many in the world, quote, will think of this as a form of fantasy from a science fiction movie. Democrats like Chuck Schumer tonight are warning this may be an actual fantasy, since Kim made no specific commitment to get rid of his nukes, while the president promised to end joint military exercises with South Korea. That has some of our allies concerned. But Republicans like Senator John Kennedy today think on balance this is a good agreement. Kennedy saying today that working with Kim is like hand feeding a shark. You can do it, but you've got to do it very, very carefully. Tucker?
Great metaphor. Great. Thanks, Ed. Is the new deal with North Korea actually a deal? Is it good for the United States? Can we trust the North Koreans to follow it? Doug Macgregor is a retired U.S. Army colonel, author of the book Margin of Victory. Congressman Jeff Fortenberry is a Republican, represents the state of Nebraska, and both of them join us tonight. Congressman, first to you. Is this a deal Americans ought to be happy about?
Well, the best word that I can use to describe the last few days, in my mind, is stunning. I think the president's actions here are bold, they're historic. It's almost unimaginable, given where we were just 6 months ago, where we were on the precipice of some type of even potential nuclear exchange. The president has leaned into something pretty radical here, and perhaps he's creating a new architecture for 21st century diplomacy. He has said to Kim Jong-un, we're going to deal with you, for good or for ill. And if it's for ill and you move your finger toward a nuclear button, we're going to hurt you. But if it's for good, I want to create the space for perhaps authentic dialogue and even friendship, and I think he accomplished that. He has rejected the norms of ossified proceduralism and stagnation that governed so many international affairs, and he took a bold risk, and I think he delivered something very important. It's his first step. We are holding out hope, obviously, for a greater vision that could evolve here, but it's an important and good first step.
Ossified proceduralism, a phrase I'm stealing. Colonel, are you as optimistic about it?
Extremely. I think this is Donald Trump's finest hour, and I'm absolutely serious. Donald Trump has recognized something that others have refused to see for a very long time in Washington. It's not simply that North Korea is on the ropes. It is. It's on the verge of collapse. Donald Trump understood that, and that's one of the reasons he was able to put the pressure on North Korea the way he did. But he also went to great lengths in his meetings with President Xi to forge an understanding with China. He treated President Xi as an equal, treated China as an equal, and I think Donald Trump understands something that is not well understood in the Pentagon at this point, or in many other places in Washington, and that our competition with China is essentially economic and technological. It is not military. And that was the key development, because without China, none of this would have happened.
Yes, that's right. And I think it clearly stemmed from what he said about trade with China. Congressman, there's been a lot of criticism of this deal from the left along the lines that the president is giving away important American advantages in exchange for nothing. How would you respond to that?
This is the combination of foreign policy realism and entrepreneurial diplomacy. And as I said, this is not only about potentially preventing a conflict and opening up a new chapter and rejecting a stalemate of the last 65 years with North Korea, but it also could signal a new way, a new architecture for diplomatic relations moving forward. Look, the world is screaming for some type of new interpersonal ecosystem, both in our homes and in our communities, as well as between nations. And what that means is that we have to have the ability to reach out and provide authenticity and dialogue and create some space, because the world is racing toward destructive technology. And then what? Civilization itself is at stake, and we've got to find a way forward toward mutuality and well-being and mutual security, or else we don't have much hope.
But, I mean, Colonel, that's a lot of what we have heard liberals and some conservatives, by the way, criticize, the idea that you meet with someone who is morally out of bounds, like Kim Jong-un. Going forward, should we be willing to meet with anybody?
Oh, absolutely. And I think Donald Trump is a disruptive force, let's be frank. He's disrupting the status quo. Lots of people in this town are very upset because this threatens to change the distribution of cash. This threatens budgets. This threatens force structures. This threatens a number of things. He recognized early on when he was campaigning that South Korea is a powerful state, infinitely more powerful than North Korea and quite capable of defending itself. He recognized that Japan is also in the same position. In fact, if Japan raises its investment in military power by just 1%, Japan will be number 3 in the world in terms of a defense budget. He understands that what Northeast Asia wants and needs is stability, order, and prosperity, not war. And I think he's got the agreement of everyone who counts in the region.
It's an amazing statistic about Japan, by the way, which most of us consider demilitarized, apparently not. Colonel, Congressman, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you.
What effect will this summit have on the rest of Asia? A meaningful question for the rest of the world. Michael Pillsbury is the man to answer it. He's a senior fellow and director of Chinese strategy at the Hudson Institute, author of maybe the single best book recently on China called The 100 Years Marathon, China's Secret Strategy to Replace America as the Global Superpower. Dr. Pillsbury joins us tonight. So what effect, Michael Pillsbury, does this have on the rest of Asia, if any, right now?
Well, it doesn't have much effect on the rest of Asia until more is revealed by President Trump of what the next steps are going to be. He's laid the foundation for moving forward. He's sent Secretary Pompeo up to Beijing. I myself have heard from the Chinese already that they are taking credit for this. They're a little bit hurt that President Trump did not give them any credit when he was in Singapore. They feel they sent the plane, they put the pressure on, they did the sanctions, they voted for these UN Security Council resolutions 3 times that made the toughest sanctions in history. They all but pushed Chairman Kim into this. And here is their friend Donald Trump, not tipping his hat to them. So, but the president, as you know, is not finished talking about this yet.
To think of the Chinese Politburo as having a heart and being having his feelings hurt. That's so interesting.
Well, we don't care if their feelings are hurt. I'm going to Beijing tomorrow, so I got to be careful what I say, Tucker.
Yes.
But I would say the reaction in Asia depends on how much concern they had about any given country had about nuclear weapons in North Korea. So down in Southeast Asia, this is not really a topic. They're much more concerned about the South China Sea. Is the U.S. really going to have some ships that go inside the 12-mile boundary and then have helicopter operations or swerve around and not request innocent passage? This is not a technical matter. Under the law of the sea, there are 5 things that if you do that, you are saying, I dispute this claim. We have not done those 5 things. We usually go in with our radar turned off. We don't do swerving turns. We don't launch helicopters. So we're recognizing the Chinese claim at the same time we're mildly challenging it. This is a big issue in Southeast Asia. When Taiwan, they're still waiting for the F-16 replacements. They asked for 55 F-16 jet fighters about 10 years ago. 48 or so U.S. senators wrote a letter. They held up the Deputy Secretary of State, give these jet fighters to Taiwan. They're for sale. They're not really gifts. That has still not happened. So Taiwan is kind of wondering what is their future. In Japan, they've got a series of issues they want to hear more about. So the North Korea issue, as you know very well, Tucker, is really a bit more about the United States feeling vulnerable to a kind of crazy person with H-bombs and 50 ICBMs, if that's what it should come to. That problem seems to be taken care of. So Americans can be happy.
Amazing.
We can admire President Trump. He's done something for us. But the rest of Asia is still waiting for answers to a broader Asia strategy, I think. And President Trump is working on that. That's what his team has been telling me.
I'd be worried if I lived in Taiwan. Michael Pillsbury, thank you very much. Great to see you.
Thank you.